The Hantavirus outbreak, with a fatality rate of up to 60%, quietly erupted aboard the Dutch polar expedition cruise ship MV Hondius. The only Chinese passenger aboard who became the focus of public attention during this biological crisis was part of a chilling scenario reminiscent of the COVID-19 outbreak that began under mysterious circumstances a few years ago. Reports indicate that the outbreak began on April 1st, when the cruise ship departed Ushuaia, Argentina. On April 6th, a 70-year-old Dutch passenger showed symptoms, and on April 18th, he passed away on board. His body was removed from the ship 13 days later at St. Helena Island in the South Atlantic. Along with the deceased's wife, 29 other passengers disembarked at that location and returned to the UK, the US, Australia, Taiwan, and other regions. At the time, the ship's outbreak was not widely disclosed, and many passengers resumed their normal lives, unaware they had potentially been exposed to a virus with a very high fatality rate. Health authorities are particularly concerned that dozens of passengers unknowingly returned home, possibly bringing the rare and deadly virus to various countries across the globe. 2 days later, the passenger's wife died in a Johannesburg hospital, South Africa. On May 2nd, a third passenger passed away on the ship. As of now, there have been 11 confirmed cases worldwide. Additionally, on May 13th, Spain's health ministry confirmed that a passenger evacuated from the ship tested positive. A Dutch hospital also reported that 12 healthcare workers who handled the patient's samples did not fully follow procedures, and these workers have been placed under quarantine for 6 weeks. Notably, a 52-year-old Chinese male passenger from Sichuan claimed that he left the ship 1 day earlier than the outbreak and had no contact with any hantavirus-positive passengers. According to mainland Chinese media, the passenger, named Chen Yong, is currently traveling the world. He had traveled aboard MV Hondius for an Antarctic expedition from March 20th to 31st, spending 12 days on board, and disembarked on March 31st, just in time to avoid the subsequent outbreak. Chen Yong stated that he has had no health issues and has been monitoring his health at home for over 6 weeks since disembarking. The incubation period of hantavirus is under scrutiny. Public data shows that hantavirus is typically transmitted by rodents. The incubation period is usually 7 to 14 days, but it can range from 4 days to 2 months. Symptoms typically include high fever, chills, loss of appetite, fatigue, dizziness, and headache. This outbreak was caused by the Hondius strain of hantavirus, the only known strain that can be transmitted from person to person. Observers note that in the Chinese government media's narrative, this lone Chinese passenger was portrayed as incredibly lucky and managed to perfectly avoid the virus. However, peeling away this media portrayal reveals an adventure that seems full of coincidences, raising unsettling questions about the entire sequence of events. The first coincidence was the narrow miss. Chen traveled aboard the ship from March 20th to 31st and disembarked on March 31st. While the Swiss passenger later confirmed to have hantavirus, boarded the ship on April 1st, just 24 hours after Chen. Chen claimed that he had no contact with this infected passenger. Official Chinese reports are keen to identify the Swiss passenger as the patient zero for this outbreak. But many in the industry believe the Dutch passenger who passed away first is the true first infected case. The second coincidence is the perfect timing of Chen's dream trip. At the end of March, this cruise ship from Ushuaia, Argentina, successfully docked, and Chen just happened to complete the final leg of his 12-year 7-continent journey. His globe-trotting dream reached a dramatic finale just before the virus outbreak struck the ship. In subsequent Chinese government media coverage, Chen was portrayed as a fortunate adventurer favored by destiny. Yet for the Chinese public, accustomed to government propaganda, such a perfect narrative often seems more like a smokescreen designed to obscure the truth. Some Chinese netizens have raised the sharpest questions. How did he know who carried the virus? Even if the first confirmed positive case boarded on April 1st, he may not have been the source of infection. Moreover, the official Chinese reports do not align with those from outside sources. So is it not possible that he himself carried the virus? The intense focus on this lucky passenger has sparked 3 major unresolved questions. First, where did the funding for the adventure journey of an ordinary working-class individual come from? Chinese media have portrayed Chen Yong as an inspirational model of a common person chasing their dreams. Reports say that he was born into an ordinary family in Yibin, Sichuan, with both parents working at the state-owned enterprise Yibin Paper Mill. After graduating, he became an ordinary salaried worker. Over the course of 12 years, he spent 1.3 million yuan to travel across all 7 continents. This presents a significant logical flaw. Global travel is an unattainable dream for the vast majority of ordinary people in China. In the context of China's economic downturn and the struggles of the lower classes to make ends meet, it is hard for an ordinary salaried worker to support such an expensive leisure expenditure, even with extreme frugality. Moreover, the MV Hondius was not just a regular cruise ship. The 13-day classic Antarctic tour departing from Ushuaia cost between $10,850 to $25,000 US, roughly 80,000 to 190,000 yuan. This amount is equivalent to several years' worth of income for an ordinary Chinese worker living with extreme frugality. How can an ordinary individual with no substantial financial backing afford such an expensive journey over 12 years? Is it possible that official or specific interest groups funded him to package the Chinese dream narrative? Second, is this lucky individual a national ambassador or just a grand propaganda disguised as a self-driving traveler? Aside from his self-driving adventure, Chen Yong is also prominently labeled in the media as a highly patriotic figure. To demonstrate his patriotism, Chen Yong has always been closely associated with Chinese brand cars during his travels over the years. Even when he reached Oceania, he intentionally rented a local Chinese brand vehicle as if he were a walking national ambassador and a promoter of Made in China abroad. This behavior essentially portrays him as a super little pink, a term used for extreme Chinese nationalists. Ironically, the Made in China products Chen Yong enthusiastically promoted are now on the decline. In recent years, with the exit of foreign investments and the transfer of industrial chains, many domestic companies have closed and workers have lost jobs. On the international market, Made in China still struggles with the stigma of being cheap, low quality, and counterfeit. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, desperately needs figures like Chen Yong, so-called grassroots ambassadors, who, through seemingly spontaneous personal actions, paint over the reality of China's economic decline and export a false narrative of national resurgence. Given this background, it's not impossible that his adventure has a more sinister agenda. Third, why did the CCP's epidemic control system suddenly fall silent in the face of such a deadly virus? After the outbreak, Chen Yong returned to China and claimed he was in good health and monitoring himself at home. His nonchalant response sparked panic and skepticism among many online users. Who would believe someone who claims they're clean? Shouldn't a person returning from a ship with such a high-risk virus be quarantined? The public's concerns are not unfounded. Looking back at the COVID-19 pandemic, the CCP authorities used extreme lockdown measures under the guise of dynamic zero COVID. Entire neighborhoods were locked down when a single person tested positive. Doors were welded shut without warning, residents were forcibly relocated for quarantine, and even buying fever medication was strictly regulated. Countless people perished during the extreme lockdowns. Now, a person who returned from a cruise ship with a deadly virus during its incubation period is allowed to self-isolate at home. When facing COVID-19, the CCP acted as though it were on high alert, reacting to every threat. But in the case of Hantavirus, which has a mortality rate several times higher and a longer incubation period, the authorities have been unusually lenient. This stark contrast in the CCP's epidemic control policies raises the question, is the CCP's epidemic control system completely failing, or does Chen Yong's special status allow him to enjoy privileges beyond those afforded to ordinary citizens? Could he even be the source of the outbreak? Disturbingly, these suspicions are starting to gain traction. On May 7, 2026, state-run media outlet China Central Television reported that, in our country, hantavirus-induced diseases are known as hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome. As of March 2026, 183 cases have been reported nationwide, with no deaths reported. Researchers found that as early as March 11, 2022, Guangzhou Baiyun Airport published an article titled "Rodent Infestation Hantavirus Emergency Drill in Progress." The article mentioned that on the afternoon of March 10th, the Environmental Management Department collaborated with a pest control company to conduct a Hantavirus emergency drill. On May 8th, an ex-user named Geely Little Sister uploaded a screenshot of an article titled Hantavirus Vaccine Research and Development from China Public Health Journal. She questioned how the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, managed to develop a hantavirus vaccine so quickly. The user pointed out, if people still don't understand what the CCP is doing, it seems the previous lockdowns during COVID-19 didn't teach anyone anything. As long as the CCP is in power, new viruses will emerge every year. The article is a collaboration between the Southern Theater Disease Prevention and Control Center and the Public Health School of Guangzhou Medical University and lists 6 authors. It outlines the biological and epidemiological characteristics of hantavirus, infection and immune responses, and provides an overview of the current state of hantavirus vaccine research. The aim is to offer insights into the basic research on hantavirus and the development of its vaccine. According to the data, China Public Health is a national core academic journal overseen by the CCP's Ministry of Health and organized by the Chinese Preventive Medicine Association. It primarily publishes updates and developments in China's public health and preventive medicine sectors. A more unusual development occurred on March 30th, when Tencent's Virology Circle published an article titled Nature Communications. Air Force Medical University's Zhangfanglin Yewei team successfully develops a hantavirus nucleic acid vaccine based on perfusion conformation stabilization. The article was published the day before the outbreak aboard the MV Hondius cruise ship, which was reported on April 1st, March 31st Beijing time. The timing of the vaccine's success announcement on March 30th raised suspicions among many netizens. On May 11th, Radio France Internationale reported that passengers evacuated from the MV Hondius cruise ship had returned to their home countries. Among the 5 passengers evacuated, 1 tested positive for hantavirus and their condition worsened. In France, 22 close contacts were confirmed, and in the US, 1 of 17 American passengers tested positive, while others showed weak signs of infection but remained asymptomatic. The report noted that there is no vaccine or effective treatment for this virus, which can cause severe acute respiratory syndrome. Mr. Guo, a former Chinese businessman who fled to the US, claimed that he had obtained top-secret CCP documents. He stated, as long as the Communist Party isn't destroyed, this virus will never be eradicated. It will keep coming in waves season after season. It is a virus that breeds. An ex-user named Morning Light commented, Hantavirus is the CCP's new round of poisoning efforts worldwide. Poisoning is the CCP's long-standing tradition. The CCP uses poison to wage viral and biochemical warfare, even deploying drones to directly poison the people. The CCP has sent spies across the globe to spread the virus as a revenge against the world. The CCP is a dictatorial terroristic regime, and it is the headquarters of global terror. On January 31st, 2026, the FBI raided a residence in Las Vegas, but it wasn't for espionage or drug dealing. Instead, they shut down an illegal biological laboratory. The news shocked both the political and public circles across the US. Reports indicate that before the FBI agents entered the garage of the residence, they had received intelligence and were carefully preparing, donning protective gear and using a miniature camera to observe. However, what they found upon entering still shocked the experienced agents. They discovered over 1,000 biological samples in locked refrigerators, along with unknown liquids, centrifuges, and gallons of unidentified chemicals. The labels on the test tubes were even more disturbing. According to the leaked information, the samples were labeled with the names of highly dangerous pathogens, including HIV, COVID-19, tuberculosis, malaria, and even Ebola. Experts have pointed out that Ebola is a biosecurity level 4 virus, with a high fatality rate and no effective treatment. If this were just an isolated incident, people might think it was the act of a mad scientist, but the issue lies in the fact that the individuals involved have previous offenses. In 2023, an illegal biological laboratory was discovered in Daly City, California, shocking the entire US. It was a warehouse disguised as an abandoned building. A meticulous building inspector noticed something unusual and entered to find a group of Chinese citizens in white coats, masks, and latex gloves working inside. Thousands of biological test tubes were seized, many labeled with various infectious disease pathogens. Some were even marked with mysterious codes. Additionally, 1,000 genetically modified mice were found. These mice were not the typical lab mice, but were genetically engineered to carry and spread the COVID-19 virus. The discovery also included refrigerators labeled with Ebola. What's even more alarming is that both these laboratories were operated by the same company and group of Chinese nationals. The company was registered under the name of Jia Beizhu, a 62-year-old former senior executive at a state-owned enterprise in China. After moving to Canada, Jia Beizhu established dozens of shell companies, which were used to steal US intellectual property and illegally transfer it back to China. Canadian courts previously convicted him of large-scale fraud and ordered him to repay 330 million Canadian dollars for stealing US intellectual property. In the US, Jia Beizhu went by the alias David He and started several biotechnology companies. He has since been federally indicted and remains in custody, but his partners and some accomplices are still at large. Investigation revealed that the business motive behind these laboratories was highly suspicious. The company claimed to sell testing kits, but in reality they were purchasing counterfeit kits from China and reselling them in the US. The small profits were insufficient to cover the costs of maintaining thousands of high-risk biological samples, purchasing expensive lab equipment, or caring for the 1,000 genetically modified mice. Where did the funding for this biological laboratory come from? According to a report by the US House Special Committee, Jia Beizhu's organization was consistently receiving large wire transfers from the Bank of China with unclear sources. A fraudster who was wanted by Canada and under investigation by the US is still receiving large sums of money from a Chinese state-owned bank. This alone raises serious concerns. How many more Jia Beizhus are there in the US? How many more hidden laboratories are there? Was the only Chinese passenger on the death cruise a lucky survivor or a poisoner? The answers remain unknown. It seems a new round of biochemical crisis is quietly approaching. The best we can do is stay alert and wait for the inevitable divine retribution.